I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. The summer heat clung to my skin as I carried my heavy market basket down Main Street. Sweat soaked through my blouse, and I walked slowly, my joints protesting with each step. At 65, I wasn't as spry as I once was, but I still insisted on doing my own shopping. The peeling paint on the storefronts told the silent story of our small town's many seasons. Arthur's Dry Cleaning appeared on the corner, its faded wooden sign swaying gently in the breeze. I stopped, pulling the wrinkled yellow claim ticket from my purse. That morning, Amy, my daughter-in-law, had pressed it into my hand, her voice soft but rushed. "Betty, please pick up my wool coat from Arthur's. I have meetings all day," she'd said, barely looking up from her phone. I'd nodded without much thought. To me, it was just one more errand I always did for my family. Joshua, my son, worked long hours at his accounting firm, while Amy managed their household and the children. Or at least, that's what she claimed to do. Lately, I'd noticed she was out more often than not. When I walked into Arthur's, the familiar smell of fabric softener mixed with steam rising from the corner press. Arthur himself, a man in his 70s with thick glasses perched on the end of his nose, stood behind the counter, flipping through a notebook with bony hands. I'd known Arthur for nearly 40 years, since Joshua was just a boy. I handed him the ticket. "Hello, Arthur. Picking up for Amy Anderson." He glanced at it and nodded, wordlessly disappearing into the back storeroom. I waited patiently, stroking the handle of my basket, thinking only about what I would cook for my grandchildren that night. Olivia had requested my special macaroni and cheese, while Lucas wanted dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets. Such simple pleasures made my heart full. Arthur returned with Amy's coat, carefully wrapped in clear plastic that smelled of softener, but instead of handing it to me, he paused. His eyes darted around the shop, making sure no one else was there. I thought it was strange, and before I could ask why, his rough, calloused hand gripped my arm tightly. "Betty," he murmured in a hoarse voice, almost a whisper, "come here for a moment." Without giving me time to react, he led me behind a worn-out curtain that covered the back of the shop. The smell of bleach and steam made it hard to breathe. Piles of clothes waiting to be pressed were stacked like a messy wall, hiding us from view. "You need to see this," he said, his voice trembling as he opened a rickety drawer under the counter. From it, he pulled out a small, clear plastic bag, just big enough to make my heart stop. Inside was a bank transfer receipt stamped in red with a figure so large I had to look at it several times to be sure I wasn't mistaken. Millions of dollars. The name on the receipt read Julian Cortez. "I found this in your daughter-in-law's coat pocket," Arthur whispered, his face pale with worry. But what made my blood run cold was what lay beside the receipt. A photograph of Olivia and Lucas, my precious grandchildren. Someone had drawn crude red circles around their innocent faces with a marker. The circles were jagged, angry, as if drawn in a fit of rage, or worse, with dark intention. "Arthur, what is this?" I stammered, my voice barely audible. He shook his head, his eyes filled with fear. "Betty, listen to me carefully. Take your grandchildren and get out of this town before sunrise." His voice was urgent, pleading. "I've known you for decades. I wouldn't say this if I wasn't certain." I stared at the photo, unable to tear my eyes away from those terrible red circles around my grandchildren's faces. But why? What do these circles mean? Arthur's hands trembled as he placed the bag in my palm. "I've seen this before years ago. My cousin worked for the police in Chicago. These markings, they're not random. They're targets." His voice dropped even lower. "Betty, your grandchildren are in danger." My legs nearly gave way beneath me. "Are you absolutely certain this was in Amy's coat?" "The wool camel coat, right pocket. I checked twice to be sure. I couldn't believe it myself. I took the coat with shaking hands, feeling like I was carrying something poisonous. The plastic bag with the receipt and photo burned in my pocket like a live coal. "Should we call the police?" I asked, my mind racing. Arthur shook his head firmly. "Not yet. Not until the children are safe. You don't know who might be involved or who's watching. Just get them away first." He squeezed my shoulder. "And Betty, don't let Amy know you've seen this. Act normal until you're gone." I left Arthur's shop with my heart hammering against my ribs. The sunny afternoon suddenly felt sinister. Every passing car made me flinch, and each stranger's glance seemed suspicious. The weight of what I'd discovered pressed down on me like a physical burden. My phone buzzed with a text from Amy. "We'll be home late. Meeting running long. Can you make dinner for the kids?" I stared at the screen, trying to reconcile the Amy I thought I knew, the woman who married my son 8 years ago, with what I'd just discovered. How could she be involved in something that would put her own children at risk? The walk home felt endless. My basket of groceries, once merely heavy, now seemed to contain the weight of the world. When I finally reached the house, Olivia and Lucas were playing in the living room under the watchful eye of Mrs. Winters, our elderly neighbor who helped watch them after school. "Grandma!" Olivia, 7 years old, with bright eyes and Joshua's smile, ran to hug me. Lucas, just 4 and a bundle of energy, abandoned his toy dinosaurs to wrap his little arms around my legs. "Hello, my darlings," I said, forcing a smile while my mind raced. How could I get them away without raising suspicion? Where could we go? What would I tell Joshua? "Everything all right, Betty?" Mrs. Winters asked, gathering her knitting. "You look pale." "Just tired from the heat," I lied, setting down my groceries. "Thank you for watching them." After Mrs. Winters left, I sat with the children, half listening to Olivia's stories about school while Lucas showed me his latest dinosaur drawing. All the while, my thoughts churned with plans and fears. "Grandma, are you listening?" Olivia asked, tugging at my sleeve. "You look worried." I stroked her hair. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking about a surprise." "A surprise? What kind of surprise?" Lucas perked up immediately. The idea came to me then. "How would you two like to go on a little trip? Just you, me, and your dad." Olivia's eyes widened. "Like a vacation? Where to?" "It's a surprise, but we need to pack a few things, very quietly like we're secret agents." I lowered my voice conspiratorially. "Can you do that for Grandma?" They nodded eagerly, excited by the game. I sent them to gather some clothes and toys while I went to the kitchen, my hands shaking as I pulled out bread, cheese, and cookies for a quick meal on the road. I filled water bottles and packed them into a small cooler, all while my mind raced with panicked thoughts. I needed to call Joshua. My son worked in Denver, hundreds of miles away. He wouldn't be back until Friday, 2 days from now. Could I wait? Arthur's warning echoed in my mind before sunrise. No, I couldn't wait for Joshua. I had to act now. I dialed his number, praying he would answer. When his voicemail picked up, I left a message trying to sound casual. "Joshua, it's Mom. Call me when you can. It's important, but don't worry. Everything's fine." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Next, I called Sandra Parker, my friend of 30 years who had been a nurse at the same hospital where I'd worked as an administrator before retirement. If there was anyone I could trust right now, it was Sandra. "Sandra," I whispered when she answered, "I need help. Do you know a reliable taxi service? One that can make a long trip tonight?" Sandra was silent for a moment. "Betty, what's wrong? You sound terrified." I took a deep breath. "I can't explain right now, but I need to get the children away quickly. It's an emergency." To her credit, Sandra didn't press. After so many years of friendship, She knew when something was serious. "I'll call my brother Mike. He drives a private car service. Very discreet. Give me 10 minutes. While waiting, I packed a suitcase with clothes for the children and myself. Olivia's favorite blue sweater, Lucas's superhero pajamas, several pairs of socks, and their comfort items, Olivia's yarn doll, and Lucas's favorite toy car. I moved quickly but quietly, checking the windows periodically for any sign of Amy returning early. My phone buzzed with Sandra's text. "Mike will be at the corner of Elm and Pine in 30 minutes. He's driving a dark blue sedan. License plate MTP 427. I texted back a quick thanks, then deleted both messages. Something told me to leave no trace of our plans. "Children," I called softly, "are you ready for our adventure?" They came into the living room, Olivia carrying her small backpack and holding Lucas's hand. "What about Mommy?" she asked. "Is she coming too?" The question stabbed at my heart. "Not this time, sweetheart. She has lots of meetings. This is a special trip just for us." Lucas's lower lip trembled. "But I want to say goodbye to Mommy." I knelt down, looking into his innocent eyes. "We'll call her later, I promise. Right now, we need to be very quiet and very brave, like in your spy games. Can you do that?" He nodded solemnly, clutching his dinosaur tighter. I helped them put on light jackets, even though the evening was warm. Something told me we might need them where we were going. I scribbled a note for Amy. "Took the kids to visit Aunt Helen. Her arthritis is acting up and she needs help. We'll call soon. Betty." There was no Aunt Helen, but it might buy us some time if Amy came home and found us gone. At precisely 8:15 p.m., we slipped out the back door and through the garden gate. I carried Lucas while Olivia walked beside me, her small hand in mine. The night was eerily quiet as we made our way to the corner where Mike would be waiting. "Remember," I whispered to the children, "this is our secret adventure. We need to be very quiet." The dark blue sedan was parked exactly where Sandra said it would be. Mike, Sandra's brother, a burly man in his 50s with kind eyes, got out when he saw us approach. "Mrs. Anderson?" he asked quietly. When I nodded, he quickly helped us into the car, securing the children in the back seat. "Where to, ma'am?" he asked once we were all inside. I took a deep breath. "The bus station, please. And Mike, if anyone asks, you never saw us." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. As we pulled away from the curb, I looked back at the house where I'd lived for the past 5 years, since moving in to help with the grandchildren. It looked peaceful, ordinary. No one would guess the secrets it held or the danger that lurked within its walls. "Grandma," Olivia whispered, "why are we leaving at night? Is something wrong?" I squeezed her hand. "Everything will be fine, my love. Sometimes we need to be brave and do unexpected things. Trust Grandma, all right?" She nodded, her eyes wide but trusting. Lucas was already dozing against his sister's shoulder, clutching his dinosaur. Looking at them, so innocent, so vulnerable, I felt a surge of determination. Whatever Amy was involved in, whatever those red circles meant, I would protect these children with my last breath. The bus station at midnight was surprisingly busy, a cacophony of announcements, rolling suitcases, and tired travelers. I kept the children close, my eyes scanning constantly for any sign of danger or recognition. At the ticket counter, I purchased 3 tickets to Charleston, South Carolina, the city where I'd spent 20 years of my life before moving to be closer to Joshua and his family. It was the only place I could think of where we might find safety. "The bus leaves in 20 minutes, the ticket agent informed me, sliding the tickets across the counter. "Platform 7. I thanked him and ushered the children to a quiet corner where we could wait. Olivia yawned widely, struggling to keep her eyes open. Lucas had fallen into a deep sleep in my arms, his weight making my old bones ache. "Grandma," Olivia whispered, "will Daddy meet us there?" "Soon, sweetheart, as soon as he can." "What about Mommy?" The question made my stomach clench. "Your Mommy is very busy with work right now. But don't worry, everything will be fine." As we boarded the bus, I felt a strange mix of fear and relief. We were getting away, but to what? And for how long? The engine roared to life, and as we pulled out of the station, I watched the town's lights recede into the distance. In my pocket, the plastic bag with its terrible contents pressed against my leg, a constant reminder of why we were fleeing in the night. The children soon fell asleep, Olivia's head resting against the window, Lucas curled up on my lap. I stayed awake, my eyes never leaving the darkened road ahead or the occasional car that passed. Every set of headlights made my heart race. Every stop along the way filled me with dread that someone might board and recognize us. By dawn, we were hundreds of miles away, the landscape outside the window changing from familiar plains to the rolling hills of the eastern states. The children woke, disoriented and hungry. I shared out the bread and cheese I'd packed, along with bottles of water. "Where are we, Grandma?" Olivia asked, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "On our way to Charleston. It's a beautiful city by the sea where I used to live. You'll love it." "Does Daddy know we're going there?" I hesitated. "Not yet. We'll call him when we arrive." The rest of the journey passed in a blur of rest stops, snacks, and whispered reassurances to the increasingly restless children. By the time we reached Charleston, nearly 18 hours later, we were all exhausted, disheveled, and in desperate need of a shower. The city welcomed us with its humid coastal air and the distant sound of church bells. I hailed a taxi, giving the driver directions to a small motel I remembered from the outskirts of town. Not fancy, but clean, and most importantly, discreet. The Palmetto Inn was just as I remembered it, a single-story building with peeling green paint and a neon sign missing several letters. The woman at the reception desk barely glanced up as I paid cash for 3 nights in advance. The room was small but clean, with 2 double beds and a tiny bathroom. The children immediately claimed one bed, bouncing on it despite their fatigue. "All right, you two," I said, trying to inject cheerfulness into my voice. "Bath time, then a nap, and later we can explore a bit." While they took turns in the bathroom, I sat on the edge of the other bed, finally allowing myself a moment to breathe. I pulled out my phone, seeing 6 missed calls from Amy and 2 from Joshua. There were multiple text messages, each more frantic than the last. Amy: "Betty, where are you? Where are the kids?" Amy: "I came home and found your note. Who is Aunt Helen? Call me back immediately." Amy: "I've called the police. This is kidnapping. Bring them back now." Joshua: "Mom, what's going on? Amy's hysterical. Call me back." My hands trembled as I considered what to do. If I called Joshua, what would I say? How could I explain what I'd found without sounding crazy? And if Amy truly was involved in something dangerous, calling either of them might put us at risk. Instead, I texted Sandra, "We're safe. Please don't tell anyone where we are. We'll explain later." Then I turned off my phone. We needed to disappear completely, at least until I could figure out what to do next. Olivia emerged from the bathroom in her pajamas, her wet hair combed neatly. "Grandma, why do you look so worried?" I forced a smile. "Just tired from our long trip, sweetheart. Come, let's get you and Lucas settled for a nap." As the children slept, I sat by the window, watching the parking lot and the street beyond. Every passing car, every stranger walking by sent a jolt of fear through me. What had I done? Was I overreacting? Or had I just saved my grandchildren from some unspeakable fate? The photo with those angry red circles haunted me. I pulled it out again, studying it in the dim light. The picture itself was innocent. Olivia and Lucas playing in the backyard, taken just a few months ago. But those circles, drawn with such obvious malice, transformed it into something sinister. What did they mean? And what was Amy's connection to Julian Cortez, the man named on the transfer receipt? The sum was staggering, $5 million. Where had such money come from? And what was it for? As evening fell, I woke the children and took them to a small diner across the street. They were subdued, confused by our sudden journey and my obvious tension. I tried to distract them with stories about Charleston, promising to take them to the beach soon. "When is Daddy coming?" Lucas asked, pushing his French fries around his plate. "Soon," I lied, hating myself for it. "He's very busy at work right now." Back in the motel room, I tucked them into bed early, exhaustion finally overwhelming their questions. As they slept, I made a decision. Tomorrow, I would seek help from the only person in Charleston I still trusted, Father Michael at St. Francis Church. Father Michael had been our parish priest when I'd lived here 2 decades ago. He'd counseled me through my husband's death, had baptized Joshua, had been a rock when I'd needed one most. If anyone could help me make sense of this nightmare, it was him. I slept fitfully, waking at every sound, a car door slamming, voices passing by, the hum of the air conditioner cycling on and off. By morning, I felt as though I hadn't slept at all. After a quick breakfast at the diner, I took the children to St. Francis Church. The old stone building stood as it always had, a beacon of stability in an increasingly chaotic world. The morning sun filtered through the stained glass windows, casting pools of colored light on the worn wooden pews. "Children," I whispered, "this is where your father was baptized when he was a baby." Olivia looked around with interest while Lucas fidgeted beside me. A few elderly parishioners knelt in prayer, and at the altar, a familiar figure arranged flowers. Father Michael had aged, his once dark hair now completely white, but I recognized him immediately. When he turned and saw me, surprise flickered across his face, followed by a warm smile of recognition. "Betty Anderson," he said, approaching us. "It's been years. What brings you back to Charleston?" Looking into his kind eyes, the dam inside me threatened to break. "Father, I need your help," I managed to say, my voice cracking. "It's about my grandchildren. They may be in danger." His expression grew serious. "Of course. Let's talk after Mass. The children can play in the parish garden." Throughout the service, I barely heard the prayers or hymns, my mind racing with what I would tell him, how I would explain my fears without sounding paranoid. When the small congregation dispersed, Father Michael led us to the parish garden where other children played under the watchful eye of an elderly nun. Olivia and Lucas, eager for normalcy, quickly joined in a game of tag. In a small office behind the altar, I finally told Father Michael everything, finding the receipt and photo, Arthur's warning, our midnight flight. "I know it sounds crazy," I finished, but Arthur seemed genuinely frightened. And those circles around the children's faces? I couldn't continue, emotion closing my throat. Father Michael studied the photo and receipt, his expression grave. "This is beyond what I can handle alone," he said finally. "But I know someone who can help. Rachel Stevens is a lawyer who specializes in family protection cases. She's also a parishioner here." He picked up his phone. "Rachel? It's Father Michael. I have someone here who needs your help urgently. It concerns children who may be in danger." He listened for a moment. "Yes, this afternoon would be perfect. Thank you." Turning back to me, he said, "Rachel will meet us here at 3. Until then, you and the children should stay at the church. It's safe here." For the first time since discovering the photo, I felt a glimmer of hope. We weren't alone anymore. As the children played in the sunshine, watched over by Sister Margaret, I sat in a pew, alternating between prayer and practicality. What would Rachel Stevens advise? Should I contact Joshua? And what would happen when Amy discovered where we'd gone? The hours passed slowly. At precisely 3 o'clock, the church door opened, and a woman in her mid-30s entered. She wore a tailored suit, her dark hair cut in a practical bob. Father Michael introduced us. "Betty, this is Rachel Stevens. Rachel, this is Betty Anderson and her grandchildren, Olivia and Lucas." Rachel shook my hand firmly. "Father Michael explained a little of your situation. Let's go somewhere private where you can tell me everything." In the same office where I'd spoken with Father Michael, I once again recounted my story. Rachel listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she asked to see the photo and receipt. Donning latex gloves from her briefcase, she examined the items carefully. "This transfer code," she said, pointing to a sequence of numbers on the receipt, "belongs to an offshore account, and the signature, Julian Cortez, is concerning." "Why? Who is he?" Rachel and Father Michael exchanged glances. "Julian Cortez has been linked to several financial fraud cases," Rachel explained. "More recently, there have been rumors connecting him to more serious crimes, including human trafficking." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Human trafficking? You think Amy is involved in selling her own children?" "I'm not saying that definitively," Rachel cautioned, "but these red circles are troubling. They resemble a marking system used by certain criminal networks to identify targets." I felt sick. "What should I do? Should I call the police?" "Not yet," Rachel advised. "If Amy is involved with Cortez, this could be more complex than local police can handle. I'm going to contact a colleague at the FBI who specializes in these cases." "In the meantime," Father Michael said gently, "you and the children should stay somewhere safe. I can arrange a room at the Sisters of Mercy shelter. No one will look for you there." Rachel nodded in agreement. "I'll need a day to gather more information. Don't use your phone or credit cards. Don't contact anyone back home. If Amy is involved in something criminal, she may be able to trace you." As we left the church, Olivia tugged at my hand. "Grandma, when are we going home? I miss my toys. And Daddy?" I knelt down, meeting her worried eyes. "Soon, sweetheart. We're having an adventure, remember? And we'll see Daddy very soon." But as we followed Father Michael to the shelter, I wondered if that was another lie. Would anything ever be the same again? And how could I protect these innocent children from a danger I barely understood? That night, in a small but clean room at the shelter, I watched Olivia and Lucas sleep. Their peaceful faces contrasted sharply with the turmoil in my heart. Whatever happened next, I vowed I would keep them safe, even if it meant never going home again. The morning sun streamed through the thin curtains of the Sisters of Mercy shelter. I'd barely slept, my mind racing with questions and fears. Beside me, Olivia and Lucas slept peacefully, unaware of the danger that had forced us to flee in the night. Looking at their innocent faces, I felt a surge of determination. Whatever was happening, whatever Amy was involved in, I needed to know the truth. I slipped out of bed carefully, trying not to wake them. Sister Catherine, a kind woman in her 60s, had promised to watch the children while I met with Rachel. As I dressed, I caught my reflection in the small mirror above the sink. The woman staring back at me looked older, more haggard than I remembered. Dark circles underlined my eyes, and my silver hair hung limply around my face. I quickly pinned it back, trying to regain some semblance of control. A soft knock at the door announced Sister Catherine's arrival. "Good morning, Betty," she whispered, seeing the children still asleep. "Father Michael asked me to give you this." She handed me an envelope. Inside was $200 in cash and a note. "For emergencies, Rachel will meet you at the church at 9 a.m. God be with you." I thanked Sister Catherine, gave her instructions for the children's breakfast, and kissed my still sleeping grandchildren before slipping out. The morning air was already thick with humidity as I walked the few blocks to St. Francis Church. Charleston was waking up. Shopkeepers raising shutters, early joggers pounding the cobblestone streets, the distant sound of a ferry horn on the harbor. Rachel was waiting on the church steps, dressed in another crisp suit despite the heat. Beside her stood a tall man with graying hair and serious eyes. "Betty, this is Agent Thomas Miller, FBI," Rachel introduced us. "And this is Agent Sarah Hayes." I hadn't noticed the younger woman standing slightly behind them, her keen eyes already assessing me. "Mrs. Anderson," Agent Miller nodded. "Rachel has briefed us on your situation. We're taking this very seriously, but we need more information." "I've told you everything I know," I said, hearing the desperation in my voice. "Not quite everything," Rachel said gently. "We need concrete evidence of what Amy is involved in. The photo and receipt are concerning, but not conclusive proof of criminal activity." Agent Hayes spoke up. "We believe your daughter-in-law may be connected to a trafficking network we've been tracking. Julian Cortez is on our radar, but we've never been able to build a solid case against him." "What are you suggesting?" I asked, though I already sensed what was coming. "We need you to go back to your house," Agent Miller said. "Look for anything that might connect Amy to Cortez. Correspondence, financial records, anything unusual." Fear gripped me. Go back? What if Amy is there? "She won't be," Rachel assured me. "I have a contact at the police department in your hometown. Amy filed a missing persons report on you and the children. They've advised her to stay at home in case you return." "But I have information saying she's currently at her office," Agent Hayes added. "You'll have approximately 3 hours to search the house safely." My heart pounded at the thought of returning to what now felt like a lion's den. "What about my son, Joshua? Should I contact him?" The agents exchanged glances. "Not yet," Miller advised. "Until we know the extent of what we're dealing with, the fewer people involved, the better." "Sandra Parker, my friend back home, has agreed to drive you," Rachel explained. "She'll pick you up at the bus station at 2 p.m. "What about Olivia and Lucas?" I asked. "They'll stay here where they're safe," Agent Hayes assured me. "Sister Catherine has agreed to watch them." Agent Miller handed me a small recording device. "Wear this. If you find anything, document it. Take photos with this." He passed me a phone I didn't recognize. "It's untraceable. Use it only for this purpose." By noon, I was on a bus heading back to the town I'd fled just days before. My stomach churned with anxiety. What would I find? What if Amy returned unexpectedly? What if I was wrong about everything? The journey passed in a blur of roadside scenery and my own turbulent thoughts. True to her word, Sandra was waiting at the bus station, her familiar face a welcome sight in a world that had suddenly become threatening and strange. "Betty?" She embraced me tightly. "Are you all right? The children?" "Safe," I assured her. "Thank you for doing this." In her car, Sandra filled me in. "The whole town's talking about your disappearance. Amy's been on local TV, pleading for information. She looks devastated, Betty." I felt a twinge of doubt. Could I be wrong? Could there be some innocent explanation for what I'd found? "Sandra, have you ever noticed anything unusual about Amy?" My friend's hesitation told me everything. "She's always been distant, especially with you. But Betty, trafficking her own children, that's hard to believe." We drove in silence for a while. As we approached my neighborhood, Sandra slowed down. "Amy's car isn't in the driveway. Coast looks clear." She parked a block away. "I'll wait here. If I see her car coming, I'll call this number." She handed me a slip of paper. "It's programmed into that phone they gave you." The walk to the house felt like crossing a minefield. Every neighbor's glance, every passing car made me flinch. I used my key to enter through the back door, half expecting alarms to sound. The house was eerily quiet. Everything looked normal. Dishes in the sink, toys scattered in the living room, mail piled on the counter. But now, with new eyes, I searched for signs of the secrets it might contain. I started in the master bedroom. Amy's clothes hung neatly in the closet, her perfumes arranged on the dresser. Nothing seemed unusual until I noticed a small gray safe tucked under a pile of winter sweaters in the back of the closet. My heart raced. I'd never seen this safe before, but I remembered something, a conversation from Joshua and Amy's anniversary party. Amy, tipsy from champagne, had laughed about Joshua's terrible memory for passwords. He always tells me to change our codes, but I like 120518, our wedding day. So easy to remember. With trembling fingers, I tried the combination. 120518. The safe clicked open. Inside, neatly stacked, were bundles of $100 bills, more cash than I'd ever seen in one place. Beside them lay several passports with unfamiliar names: Maria Gonzalez, Juan Alvarez, Sofia Morales. I flipped through them, my hands shaking. Each contained photos of different people, none of whom I recognized. Then I found it, a manila envelope containing 3 airline tickets, business class from Chicago to Madrid, dated for next week. The names on the tickets: Amy Anderson, Olivia Anderson, Lucas Anderson. Joshua's name was nowhere to be seen. My blood ran cold. Amy was planning to take the children and leave the country, leave Joshua behind. But why Spain? And who were these other people whose passports she kept? At the bottom of the safe was another envelope. Inside was a photograph of Amy embracing a handsome man in his 40s. They stood on a beach, looking like lovers rather than business associates. On the back, written in Amy's neat handwriting, "My Cortez." I fumbled for the recording device, my voice barely a whisper as I described what I'd found. I took photos of everything: the cash, the passports, the tickets, the photo of Amy and Cortez. A yellowed envelope at the bottom of the safe caught my eye. It contained old newspaper clippings about missing children in various states, dating back several years. Why would Amy keep these? Suddenly, I heard a car door slam outside. Through the bedroom window, I saw Amy's red SUV in the driveway. Panic seized me. I quickly replaced everything in the safe exactly as I'd found it, closed it, and shoved it back under the sweaters. I had to get out, but how? The bathroom window. It was small, but I could fit through. I slipped into the bathroom just as I heard the front door open. Amy's voice floated up the stairs. She was on the phone. "Yes, I filed the report," she was saying. "No, they haven't found them yet. I'm telling you, Cortez, this complicates everything." I froze, straining to hear more. Amy's voice grew fainter as she moved to the kitchen, but I caught fragments. "The tickets are still good. Have to move quickly. Buyer waiting." Buyer. The word hit me like a physical blow. Agent Hayes had been right. Amy was involved in trafficking, and my grandchildren were her merchandise. With shaking hands, I opened the bathroom window, thankful that the trellis beneath it was sturdy enough to support my weight. I climbed out just as Amy's footsteps sounded on the stairs. The descent was agonizing, each creak of the trellis sounding like a gunshot to my ears. When my feet finally touched the ground, I ducked behind the azalea bushes, then made my way to the neighbor's yard, keeping low. By the time I reached Sandra's car, I was breathless and trembling. "Drive," I gasped. "Amy's home." Sandra didn't ask questions. She pulled away smoothly, driving the speed limit to avoid attention. "Did you find anything?" she asked when we were safely away. "Everything," I whispered, feeling sick. "She's planning to take the children to Spain, without Joshua. And there's more." So much worse than I imagined. At the bus station, Sandra hugged me fiercely. "Be careful, Betty, and call me when you're safe." The return journey to Charleston felt even longer. My mind kept replaying what I'd found, what I'd heard. Amy's voice saying "buyer waiting" echoed in my head like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. By the time I reached St. Francis Church, it was nearly midnight. Father Michael was waiting, his face lined with worry. "The agents are waiting at the shelter," he told me. "The children are asleep." I followed him through the quiet streets, too exhausted and heartsick to speak. At the shelter, Agent Miller, Agent Hayes, and Rachel sat around a small table, their faces grim in the lamplight. "I found evidence," I said without preamble, handing over the phone with the photos. "Amy is definitely involved with Cortez. She's planning to take the children to Spain next week. There were multiple passports, cash, and I overheard her on the phone talking about a buyer." Agent Hayes examined the photos, her expression hardening. "This confirms our suspicions. Cortez operates a trafficking network that specializes in selling children to wealthy clients overseas." "But they're her own children," I protested, though the evidence was before me. "It happens more often than you'd think," Agent Miller said quietly. "Sometimes for money, sometimes to escape abusive relationships. In this case, it seems financial." "Amy and Joshua have been having money problems," I admitted. "Joshua mentioned they were behind on the mortgage. But this, selling her own children?" Rachel placed a hand on mine. "Betty, the red circles on that photo, they're a specific code used in trafficking networks. They mark the merchandise." The word made me flinch. "What do we do now?" "We set a trap," Agent Miller explained. "Make Amy think the children have disappeared. Force her to contact Cortez. When they're both panicking about their missing merchandise, they'll slip up, reveal their plans. That's when we'll move in." "You want to use my grandchildren as bait?" I asked, horrified. "No," Agent Hayes assured me. "The children stay here, completely safe. We just make Amy think they've vanished. She filed a missing persons report on all three of you, claiming you kidnapped them. We'll let her believe you've disappeared with them." "But what about Joshua? My son deserves to know what's happening." The agents exchanged glances. "Not yet," Miller decided. "If he's completely innocent, his reaction could tip off Amy. We need her to believe she's dealing with this crisis alone." That night I lay awake in the small room at the shelter, listening to Olivia and Lucas breathe. How could their own mother plan to sell them like objects? What kind of monster had my son married? I thought of Joshua, hard-working, kind, perhaps a little oblivious to his wife's true nature. How would he survive this betrayal? How would the children cope when they learned the truth about their mother? Morning brought Rachel with news. "We've set up surveillance on Amy's phone. She's been calling Cortez repeatedly, growing more desperate. They're planning to meet tonight at the Red Roof Inn just outside of town." "What happens then?" "We'll be waiting. Once they incriminate themselves, we move in." The day crawled by, each minute stretching like an hour. I tried to keep the children occupied with games and stories, but my mind was elsewhere, imagining the trap about to spring on Amy and Cortez. At 6 p.m., Rachel arrived with Agent Hayes. "It's time," she said. "We need you to come with us. The children will stay here with Sister Catherine." I knelt before Olivia and Lucas. "Grandma has to go out for a little while. Be good for Sister Catherine, okay? I'll be back soon." "Promise?" Lucas asked, his small hand clutching my sleeve. "Promise," I whispered, kissing his forehead. Outside, a black unmarked van waited. Inside, Agent Miller nodded to me, surrounded by monitoring equipment. "We've tapped Amy's phone. She's on her way to meet Cortez now." The drive to the Red Roof Inn took 20 minutes. We parked 2 blocks away, joining other agents already positioned around the perimeter. Through earpieces, we could hear Amy's conversation as it unfolded in real time. "Cortez, I've looked everywhere. They're gone." Amy's voice was frantic. A man's voice responded, cold and annoyed. "You need to calm down. We can't back out now. The buyer has already paid half." "But without the children, what do we have to deliver?" "We'll find them. Your mother-in-law couldn't have gotten far with 2 kids. Maybe they're at a relative's house?" "I've called everyone. Nobody's seen them." "Then we expand the search. The handover is scheduled for next week in Madrid. We have time." "And if we don't find them?" Cortez's voice turned menacing. "Then you'll owe my associates $5 million. You know what happens to people who can't pay." The conversation continued, each word more incriminating than the last. Beside me, Agent Hayes whispered, "We've got them. This is everything we need." Through binoculars, I could see the motel room door. A tall, well-dressed man paced inside. Julian Cortez, I presumed. Amy sat on the edge of the bed, her head in her hands. "All units, prepare to move in," Agent Miller spoke into his radio. What happened next was like a scene from a movie. Police cars converged on the motel from all directions, lights flashing. Agents in tactical gear rushed the room. Through the open door, I saw Amy's face transform from despair to shock as she realized what was happening. "FBI! Hands where we can see them!" Cortez tried to run, but an agent tackled him to the ground. Amy just sat there, too stunned to move as an agent handcuffed her. As they were led to separate patrol cars, Amy's eyes found mine where I stood beside Agent Hayes. The look of pure hatred she shot me made my blood run cold. "Betty," Agent Hayes said gently, "it's over. They'll both face federal charges for human trafficking, conspiracy, and money laundering. They won't be able to hurt your grandchildren." But it wasn't over. Not for me, not for Joshua, and certainly not for Olivia and Lucas. Our ordeal was just beginning. The next morning, Agent Miller and Rachel came to the shelter with news. "We've been analyzing the phones and documents seized from Amy and Cortez," Miller explained. "What we've found is disturbing." We sat at a small table in a corner of the communal dining room, speaking in hushed tones while the children played nearby under Sister Catherine's watchful eye. "Amy's involvement with Cortez goes back at least 2 years, Rachel said, opening a folder. "They met while she was on a business trip to Miami. In reality, she was there to meet with Cortez's associates." "But why?" I asked. "Why would she get involved in something so horrible?" Agent Miller sighed. "Money primarily. Your son and Amy were deeply in debt. Gambling debts, mostly hers. They had a second mortgage on the house, maxed out credit cards. According to the evidence, Amy owed over $600,000 to various creditors. The amount staggered me. Joshua never mentioned financial problems that severe." "He may not have known," Rachel suggested. "We found separate bank accounts in Amy's name, credit card statements sent to a P.O. box." Agent Miller continued. "But there's more. The red circles on that photo, they're part of a coding system used by Cortez's network. They mark potential merchandise for wealthy clients overseas." "You're saying Amy agreed to sell her own children to pay off gambling debts?" The idea was too monstrous to comprehend. "Not just gambling debts," Agent Hayes said, joining us with coffee. "Based on text messages we recovered, Amy was planning to start a new life with Cortez in Spain. The children were her ticket in, her contribution to his business." I felt physically ill. "Does Joshua know yet?" "We contacted him this morning," Miller confirmed. "He's flying in from Denver later today. We'll brief him at the field office." "I should be there," I insisted. "He shouldn't hear this from strangers." Rachel nodded. "We've arranged for you to meet with him first. But Betty, prepare yourself. This will devastate him." While waiting for Joshua's arrival, I spent time with Olivia and Lucas, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. They were growing increasingly confused and anxious about our extended adventure. "When are we going home, Grandma?" Olivia asked during lunch. "I miss my room, and Daddy, and—" She hesitated. "Mommy, too." My heart broke. How could I explain that their mother had betrayed them in the most fundamental way possible, that she'd marked them for sale like cattle? "Your daddy is coming to see us today," I told her, forcing a smile. "Won't that be wonderful?" Lucas clapped his hands in excitement. "Is Mommy coming too?" "No, sweetheart. Mommy has other things to do right now." At 4 p.m., Agent Hayes drove me to the FBI field office in downtown Charleston. The imposing building made my anxiety spike. Inside, she led me to a small conference room. "Your son should be here any minute. Take as much time as you need." Left alone, I paced nervously. What would I say? How could I possibly explain what had happened? The door opened, and there stood Joshua, my only child, looking exhausted and confused. At 38, he still had his father's strong jaw and kind eyes, though now those eyes were shadowed with worry and lack of sleep. "Mom?" he said, his voice breaking. "What's going on? Where are the kids? The FBI wouldn't tell me anything except that you're all safe." I embraced him tightly, feeling him tremble. "The children are fine, Joshua. They're at a shelter, well cared for." "A shelter? Mom, why did you take them? Amy's been frantic. She called the police, filed missing persons reports. She thinks you kidnapped them." I guided him to a chair. "Joshua, please sit down. What I'm about to tell you will be difficult to hear." Over the next hour, I told him everything. Finding the photo and receipt in Amy's coat, Arthur's warning, our flight to Charleston, the evidence in the safe, and finally, Amy's arrest. Joshua listened in stunned silence, his face growing paler with each revelation. When I finished, he sat motionless, tears streaming down his face. "No," he whispered. "There must be some mistake. Amy wouldn't. She couldn't. I'm so sorry," I said, taking his hands. "I wish it weren't true." He pulled away suddenly, standing up. "I need to see her. I need to hear this from her own mouth." "Joshua, she was arrested for trying to traffic your children. She admitted it on a recorded phone call." "I don't care. She's my wife, the mother of my children." His voice cracked with anguish. "There has to be an explanation." Agent Miller entered quietly. "Mr. Anderson, I understand your confusion and pain, but I can assure you the evidence against your wife is overwhelming." He showed Joshua the photos I'd taken of the safe's contents, played snippets of Amy's conversations with Cortez. With each piece of evidence, Joshua seemed to physically shrink, his denial crumbling beneath the weight of undeniable truth. "The red circles," he said finally, his voice hollow. "What do they mean?" Agent Hayes explained gently about the trafficking network's coding system. Joshua listened, his expression transitioning from disbelief to horror to a profound aching grief. "Can I see my children now?" he asked when she finished, his voice barely audible. "Of course," I said, standing. "They've been asking for you." The reunion at the shelter was bittersweet. Olivia and Lucas ran to their father with cries of delight, unaware of the tragedy unfolding around them. Joshua held them tightly, his eyes closed against tears, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. That night, after the children were asleep, Joshua and I sat in the shelter's small kitchen, cups of cooling coffee between us. "I knew something was wrong," he admitted, staring at his hands. Amy had been different lately, secretive, always on her phone, taking trips for work that seemed unnecessary, and money kept disappearing from our accounts. When I asked, she'd get defensive, accuse me of not trusting her. Why didn't you say something? I asked gently. He looked up, his eyes haunted. Because I loved her. Because I wanted to believe her explanations. Because I couldn't imagine she'd be capable of this. His voice broke. What am I going to tell Olivia and Lucas? How do I explain that their mother tried to sell them? I had no answer. We sat in silence, the weight of the future heavy between us. The next day, Agent Miller briefed us on what would happen next. Amy and Cortez will be arraigned tomorrow. Given the evidence, they'll almost certainly be denied bail. The trial won't begin for several months. What about the children? Joshua asked. When can I take them home? Agent Miller hesitated. Mr. Anderson, your home is currently classified as a crime scene. We're still gathering evidence about the extent of the trafficking network. Additionally, we need to ensure no associates of Cortez might target your family for retaliation. So we're stuck here indefinitely. Joshua's voice rose with frustration. Not necessarily, Rachel interjected. We can arrange temporary housing here in Charleston. You mentioned you work remotely. Would your company allow you to continue working from here for a while? Joshua nodded slowly. I suppose. But what about the children's school, their lives? One step at a time, I suggested. For now, they're safe. That's what matters most. Later that afternoon, Rachel brought disturbing news. The FBI analyzed Amy's laptop. They found evidence she's been communicating with Cortez for over 3 years, before Lucas was even born. The implication hit me like a physical blow. Are you saying... Rachel nodded grimly. It's possible Amy had Lucas specifically to fulfill an order from one of Cortez's clients. They found emails discussing the perfect male specimen for a wealthy client in Eastern Europe. Joshua, overhearing as he entered the room, stopped dead in his tracks. What did you just say? Rachel repeated the information, her voice gentle but direct. Joshua staggered, clutching the doorframe for support. My son, he whispered. My baby boy. She had him to sell him? I moved to support Joshua, guiding him to a chair. His face had gone ashen, his breathing shallow and rapid. We don't know that for certain, Rachel cautioned. But the timing aligns with emails between Amy and Cortez discussing a lucrative opportunity involving a special order. Joshua buried his face in his hands. I remember when she suggested having a second child. I was surprised. She'd been adamant about stopping after Olivia. She said she'd changed her mind, that Olivia needed a sibling. His voice broke. It was all a lie. Everything was a lie. That night I lay awake listening to Joshua's muffled sobs from the next room. The children, thankfully, slept peacefully, unaware of the nightmare surrounding them. I thought about Amy, the woman I'd welcomed into our family 8 years ago. Had there been signs I'd missed? Had she always been capable of such calculated cruelty? Or had something changed her? And how could she look at her beautiful children every day, knowing she planned to sell them like commodities? The next morning brought the arraignment. Joshua insisted on attending, despite my concerns about his emotional state. I need to see her face, he said firmly. I need to look her in the eye when she pleads. The courtroom was small and crowded. Amy and Cortez were led in separately, both in prison jumpsuits, hands cuffed before them. Amy's normally perfect appearance was disheveled, her face bare of makeup, her eyes darting nervously around the room. When she spotted Joshua, she froze, her expression a complex mixture of shame, defiance, and something that might have been regret. The charges were read: conspiracy to commit human trafficking, money laundering, fraud, and child endangerment. The prosecutor, a stern woman in her 50s, outlined the case against them, describing the evidence in clinical terms that somehow made it even more horrifying. Your Honor, The defendants were caught in the act of planning to transport 2 minor children overseas for the purpose of selling them to wealthy clients. The evidence includes recorded phone conversations explicitly discussing the handover and buyer. Amy's attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit, argued for bail, claiming Amy was a devoted mother who had been manipulated by Cortez. The judge was unmoved. Bail denied for both defendants. They will remain in custody until trial. As they were led away, Amy turned toward Joshua, mouthing what looked like, "I'm sorry." Joshua stared back, his face a mask of stone. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us, shoving microphones in our faces, shouting questions. Agent Hayes quickly ushered us to a waiting car. "The media has gotten hold of the story," she explained as we pulled away. "This case involves wealthy international clients. It's going to get a lot of attention." Back at the shelter, Rachel had more news. The FBI has identified at least 3 other children who were trafficked through Cortez's network in the past 2 years. They're working to locate them and the buyers. "Will they be able to recover those children?" I asked, horrified at the thought of other families destroyed by this evil. Rachel's expression was grim. "They'll try, but international cases are complex. Some countries don't cooperate well with U.S. authorities." That evening, Joshua sat the children down for a difficult conversation. "Olivia, Lucas," he began gently, "we're going to be staying in Charleston for a while. I found us an apartment near the ocean." Olivia's brow furrowed. "What about school? What about our house? You'll go to school here, make new friends. Our house? We can't go back there right now." "What about Mommy?" Lucas asked innocently. "Is she coming to the new apartment too?" Joshua's composure nearly broke. "Nobody. Mommy did something wrong. She has to stay away for a while." "Like a timeout?" Lucas persisted. "Something like that," Joshua managed. "A very long timeout." As the children processed this news with confusion, I marveled at Joshua's strength. Despite his world crumbling around him, he was focused on protecting his children, on building a new life for them. Later, he confessed his fears to me. "Mom, how do I do this? How do I raise them alone? How do I protect them from the truth about their mother?" I took his hand. "One day at a time, and you're not alone. I'm here. We'll do this together." In the days that followed, we moved into a small apartment Rachel helped us find, just blocks from the beach. The children were enrolled in a local school, and Joshua arranged to work remotely indefinitely. Slowly, painfully, we began to build a new normal, but the specter of Amy's betrayal hung over everything like a dark cloud, and I knew the hardest parts of our journey still lay ahead. The FBI command van hummed with activity as I sat between Agent Hayes and Rachel, watching monitors displaying the perimeter of the Red Roof Inn. The night air was thick with tension as we waited for Amy and Cortez to incriminate themselves further. "The recording device is active," Agent Miller announced, adjusting a dial on the sophisticated equipment. "We're getting clear audio." Through the speakers, Amy's frantic voice filled the small space. "Cortez, I've searched everywhere. I can't find them anywhere." Cortez's reply was cold, calculating. "You need to calm down. The plan is still in place. The buyer is expecting delivery next week." I flinched at the word buyer, my stomach churning with disgust. These were my grandchildren they were discussing, not merchandise, but 2 innocent souls who deserved love and protection. "But without the children, what are we delivering?" Amy's voice cracked with desperation. "We can't show up empty-handed." "The buyers have already paid half the amount up front. $5 million, Amy. If we can't deliver, they'll want their money back, with interest. And these aren't people who accept excuses." Amy's voice dropped to a whisper. "What will they do?" "Let's just say you don't want to find out." Cortez's tone sent chills down my spine. We need those kids. Your mother-in-law couldn't have gotten far with 2 children in tow. Have you checked with relatives, friends? I've called everyone. I've even gone on local TV begging for information. Nobody's seen them. What about your husband? Could he be involved? Amy scoffed. Joshua, he's clueless as always. Still in Denver at that conference, has no idea what's happening. He trusts me completely. The contempt in her voice when speaking about my son was palpable. Agent Hayes nodded to Miller. That's enough. We've got multiple instances of conspiracy to commit human trafficking on tape. All units, prepare to move in. Miller spoke into his radio, his voice firm and controlled. What followed was like a scene from a movie. Police vehicles converged on the motel from multiple directions, lights flashing in the darkness. SWAT team members in tactical gear moved swiftly to surround room 114, where Amy and Cortez were meeting. Through the binoculars Agent Hayes handed me, I watched as the door was breached. Amy's face registered pure shock as officers stormed in, weapons drawn. Cortez made a dash for the bathroom window but was quickly tackled to the floor. FBI, hands where we can see them. The officers efficiently handcuffed both Amy and Cortez, reading them their rights as they were led to separate patrol cars. As Amy was escorted past our van, her eyes locked with mine through the tinted window, somehow knowing exactly where I was. The hatred in her gaze sent ice through my veins. It's over, Betty, Agent Hayes said gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. They can't hurt Olivia and Lucas now. But I knew better. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. The hard part would be helping my son and grandchildren recover from this betrayal. Back at the shelter, Sister Catherine met me at the door, her kind face concerned. The children are asleep. They've been asking for you. I nodded, too emotionally drained to speak. I peeked into the small room where Olivia and Lucas slept peacefully, unaware that their world had just been irrevocably changed. Looking at their innocent faces, a wave of protective love washed over me. I silently vowed to shield them from as much pain as possible in the difficult days ahead. You should rest too, Sister Catherine suggested. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. But sleep eluded me. I lay awake thinking of Joshua, who would arrive tomorrow to learn that his wife had planned to sell their children. How would he cope with such a monstrous betrayal? And how would we ever explain to Olivia and Lucas what their mother had done? The morning brought a soft knock at my door. Rachel stood there, her expression grave. Joshua's plane just landed. Agents are bringing him to the field office. You should be there when he learns the truth. I nodded, quickly dressing and checking on the still sleeping children. Sister Catherine will stay with them? Of course. They'll be safe here. The ride to the FBI field office was silent, my mind rehearsing what I would say to Joshua. How do you tell a man that the woman he loves, the mother of his children, had betrayed them in the most unimaginable way? Joshua was waiting in a small conference room, his face drawn with worry, eyes red from lack of sleep. When he saw me, relief flooded his features momentarily before confusion set back in. Mom? He rushed forward, embracing me tightly. What's happening? Where are Olivia and Lucas? The agents wouldn't tell me anything except that you're all safe. I held his hands, guiding him to a chair. Joshua, the children are safe. They're at a shelter with kind people watching over them. I took a deep breath. But there's something you need to know, and it's going to be difficult to hear. Over the next hour, with Agent Miller occasionally providing supporting evidence, I explained everything. Finding the photo with red circles, Arthur's warning, our escape to Charleston, the evidence in Amy's safe, and finally, her arrest with Cortez. Joshua listened in stunned silence, his face growing paler with each revelation. When I finished, he sat motionless, tears streaming down his cheeks. No, he whispered, shaking his head. There has to be a mistake. Amy wouldn't. She couldn't. I'm so sorry, I said, my heart breaking for him. I wish it weren't true. Agent Miller slid forward a folder containing photos of the evidence. The airline tickets to Madrid, the multiple passports, the stacks of cash, the photograph of Amy with Cortez. There's more, Mr. Anderson, he said gently. We have recordings of your wife and Cortez discussing the sale of your children to overseas buyers. Joshua's hands trembled as he opened the folder, his eyes widening at the evidence of Amy's betrayal. I don't understand, he said, his voice breaking. We've been married for 8 years. We have a life together. How could she do this? Agent Hayes spoke up. Financial records show your wife has been gambling heavily for at least 3 years. She owes significant amounts to several casinos. Additionally, there's evidence of an intimate relationship with Cortez dating back at least 2 years. Joshua seemed to physically collapse in on himself, his shoulders hunching forward as if under an unbearable weight. The trips, he murmured. The business conferences. All lies. Your wife and Cortez are being charged with conspiracy to commit human trafficking, money laundering, fraud, and child endangerment, Agent Miller explained. Given the evidence, they'll almost certainly be denied bail. Joshua looked up, his eyes haunted. Can I see my children now? Of course, I said, standing. They've been asking for you. The reunion at the shelter was bittersweet. Olivia and Lucas ran to their father with cries of joy, unaware of the tragedy unfolding around them. Joshua knelt, gathering them into his arms, burying his face against their small shoulders to hide his tears. Daddy, why are you crying? Olivia asked, pulling back to study his face. Joshua forced a smile. Because I'm so happy to see you, Princess. Are we going home now? Lucas asked eagerly. Joshua exchanged a glance with me over their heads. Not just yet, buddy. We're going to have a little adventure in Charleston for a while. That night, after the children were asleep, Joshua and I sat in the shelter's small kitchen, cups of tea growing cold between us. I should have known, he said, breaking the long silence. There were signs. Money missing from our accounts, her secretiveness about her phone, the unexplained trips. But I trusted her. I believed her explanations. His voice cracked. I'm their father. I should have protected them. Joshua, this isn't your fault, I insisted. Amy hid this from everyone. She was deliberately deceptive. He looked up, his eyes tormented. But why? Why would she do this to her own children? I had no answer that could ease his pain. The preliminary hearing was set for 2 weeks after the arrests. During that time, we established a temporary life in Charleston. With Rachel's help, Joshua found a small 3-bedroom apartment near the beach. The children were enrolled in a local elementary school, and Joshua arranged to work remotely indefinitely. The morning of the hearing dawned clear and bright, a cruel contrast to the darkness we were about to face. Joshua insisted on attending, despite my concerns. I need to see her, he said firmly. I need to hear the charges read in court. The courtroom was crowded with reporters and curious onlookers, drawn by the sensational nature of the case. Amy and Cortez were led in separately, both in prison jumpsuits, their hands and feet shackled. Amy's appearance shocked me. Always meticulously groomed, she now looked disheveled, her hair limp, dark circles under her eyes. When she spotted Joshua in the gallery, she froze momentarily, something like shame flickering across her face before her expression hardened again. The charges were read: conspiracy to commit human trafficking, money laundering, fraud, child endangerment. The prosecutor, a stern woman in her 50s, outlined the case against them with clinical precision. Your Honor, The evidence against the defendants is overwhelming. We have recorded conversations explicitly discussing the sale of 2 minor children to overseas buyers. Financial records show transfers of funds consistent with human trafficking operations. Multiple fake passports and airline tickets confirm plans to transport the children internationally. Amy's defense attorney argued that she had been coerced and manipulated by Cortez, that she feared for her life if she didn't comply. The judge seemed skeptical. Given the serious nature of these charges and the flight risk, bail is denied for both defendants. They will remain in custody until trial. As they were led away, Amy turned toward Joshua, mouthing what looked like, "I'm sorry." Joshua stared back, his face a mask of stone. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us, shouting questions and thrusting microphones in our faces. Agent Hayes quickly guided us to a waiting car. "The media attention will die down eventually," she assured us. "For now, focus on keeping the children's routine as normal as possible." Back at the apartment, Olivia was full of questions. At 7, she was old enough to sense something was seriously wrong. "Daddy, why can't we go home? When is Mommy coming?" Joshua knelt to her level, his voice gentle but firm. "Olivia, do you remember how in your storybooks sometimes there are people who do bad things?" She nodded solemnly. "Well, sometimes in real life, people we know, even people we love, can do bad things too. Mommy did something very wrong, and now she has to face consequences for that." "Like a timeout?" Lucas asked innocently. Joshua's composure nearly broke. "Yes, buddy. Like a very serious, very long timeout." "Did she hurt someone?" Olivia persisted, her young mind trying to make sense of the situation. Joshua and I exchanged glances, unsure how much to reveal. "She tried to hurt people," he said finally. "But Grandma stopped her. Grandma protected you." Olivia turned to me, her eyes wide. "Is that why we came to Charleston? Were you saving us?" I hugged her tightly. "Yes, sweetheart. Sometimes grandmas have to be very brave to keep the people they love safe." In the months that followed, we established a new routine. Joshua threw himself into being both mother and father to the children. I managed the household and provided emotional support to all 3 of them. The children adjusted to their new school with the resilience only the young possess, but the specter of Amy's betrayal haunted us. Joshua suffered nightmares, often waking in a cold sweat. Olivia became fiercely protective of her brother, refusing to let him out of her sight at school, and Lucas began wetting the bed again, a regression his therapist attributed to trauma and anxiety. 6 months after the arrests, the trial began. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. Financial records showed millions of dollars flowing through accounts connected to Cortez, with Amy receiving regular payments. Email exchanges between them discussed merchandise and delivery dates. Most damning were the recorded phone conversations from the night of their arrest, where they explicitly discussed the sale of Olivia and Lucas. Amy's defense team tried to portray her as a victim of Cortez's manipulation, a woman trapped by debt and fear. But their arguments rang hollow against the mountain of evidence. The most difficult day came when I was called to testify. From the witness stand, I recounted finding the photograph with the red circles, Arthur's warning, our flight to Charleston, and the evidence I discovered in Amy's safe. "Mrs. Anderson," the prosecutor asked, "in your opinion, was your daughter-in-law acting under duress or of her own free will?" I took a deep breath, aware of Amy's eyes boring into me from the defense table. Amy was always independent and strong-willed. In the 8 years I've known her, I've never seen her do anything she didn't want to do. She made her choices consciously and deliberately. Amy's attorney tried to undermine my testimony during cross-examination. "Isn't it true that you and the defendant had a strained relationship? That you were jealous of her role in your son's life?" "Objection!" the prosecutor called. Relevance? I'm establishing potential bias, Your Honor, the defense attorney argued. I'll allow it, the judge ruled. The witness will answer. I looked directly at the jury. Amy and I had our differences, as many mothers and daughters-in-law do. But I loved her because my son loved her, and because she was the mother of my grandchildren. I paused, my voice breaking slightly. At least I thought she loved them too. Joshua's testimony was even more heart-wrenching. He described their marriage, how Amy had changed over time, becoming secretive and distant. He spoke of the financial problems he'd only discovered after her arrest, the gambling debts, the second mortgage she'd taken out without his knowledge, the credit cards maxed to their limits. Did you ever suspect your wife might harm your children? The prosecutor asked gently. Joshua shook his head, his voice barely audible. Never. I thought she loved them as much as I do. I would have done anything to protect them if I'd known. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning with their verdict, guilty on all counts for both Amy and Cortez. At the sentencing hearing 2 weeks later, the judge did not mince words. The crimes you have committed are among the most reprehensible that come before this court. You conspired to sell 2 innocent children, your own children, Mrs. Anderson, into what would almost certainly have been lives of exploitation and abuse. He sentenced Amy to 20 years in federal prison. Cortez, with his prior record and role as the leader of the trafficking network, received 30 years. As Amy was led away, she looked back at Joshua one last time. Whatever she saw in his face made her turn away quickly, shoulders slumped in defeat. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Joshua faced the cameras, his voice steady despite his obvious emotional exhaustion. Today, justice was served, but there are no winners here. My children have lost their mother. I've lost the woman I thought I knew and loved. Our focus now is on healing and moving forward as a family. He took my hand. My mother's courage saved my children, and for that, I will be eternally grateful. The weeks following the trial were both a relief and a new challenge. The immediate threat was gone, but now we had to build a new normal from the ashes of our former lives. Joshua decided to make our stay in Charleston permanent. There's nothing for us back there but painful memories, he said one evening as we sat on the balcony of our apartment, watching Olivia and Lucas play on the beach below. I can work remotely indefinitely. The children are settling into their school, and we have a support system here now. Father Michael, Rachel, even some of the agents have become friends. I nodded, understanding his decision. What about the house? I've put it on the market. Rachel found me a local realtor who can handle everything without us having to go back. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, now streaked with premature gray. I never want to set foot in that house again. The children were adapting with remarkable resilience, though not without struggles. Olivia had become fiercely protective of her younger brother, insisting on walking him to his classroom each morning and waiting for him after school. Lucas still had nightmares, often crawling into bed with Joshua or me in the middle of the night, seeking comfort from unnamed fears. Their therapist, Dr. Elaine Monroe, a specialist in childhood trauma, advised us to be honest with them in age-appropriate ways. Children sense when adults are hiding things, she explained during one of our family sessions. It creates anxiety and mistrust. They need to know the basic truth in terms they can understand. Following her guidance, Joshua sat down with the children one Sunday afternoon while I prepared their favorite meal in the kitchen, close enough to provide support if needed. Olivia, Lucas, he began, his voice gentle but serious. We need to talk about Mom and why she won't be coming back. Lucas clutched his dinosaur toy tightly. Is she still in timeout? Yes, buddy, a very long one. What Mommy did was very serious. What did she do? Olivia asked, her young face solemn. Joshua took a deep breath. She made a plan with a bad man to take you and Lucas away from me, away from Grandma, away from everyone who loves you. They were going to send you to live with strangers in another country. Olivia's eyes widened. Why would she do that? Because the bad man offered her money, and because Mommy made bad choices. Sometimes adults make terrible mistakes, and then they have to face consequences. Did she stop loving us? Lucas's voice was small, vulnerable. Joshua gathered both children into his arms. I think something inside Mommy broke, and she forgot how to love properly. But that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. You are perfect, wonderful children, and Daddy and Grandma love you more than anything in the world. Olivia processed this information with a maturity that broke my heart. That's why Grandma took us away in the night? To save us from Mommy and the bad man? Yes, Princess. Grandma is very brave and very smart. She protected you when I couldn't. Olivia wiggled out of his embrace and came to find me in the kitchen, wrapping her arms around my waist. Thank you for saving us, Grandma, she whispered. I knelt down, holding her close, tears streaming down my face. I will always protect you, sweet girl. Always. That night, after the children were asleep, Joshua joined me on the balcony. The moon cast a silver path across the dark ocean, waves crashing rhythmically on the shore below. I'm thinking of changing their last name, he said quietly. And mine too. Anderson has too many associations now. The trial, the media coverage. I was thinking of taking your maiden name, Collins. Joshua Collins, I tested it. Olivia and Lucas Collins. It has a nice ring to it. He nodded, staring out at the water. A fresh start. That's what we need. Have you heard from Amy? I asked cautiously. She writes letters. I haven't opened any of them. His voice hardened. I don't know if I ever will. I placed my hand over his. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. The legal aftermath of Amy's crimes continued for months. There were civil forfeiture proceedings for the money and assets connected to the trafficking network, insurance claims for the fraudulent policies Amy had taken out on the children, endless paperwork to untangle the financial web she'd created. Through it all, Joshua showed remarkable strength. He never missed a day of work, never skipped the children's school events, never failed to read them bedtime stories each night. But when they were asleep, I often found him sitting alone in the dark, tears silently tracking down his face. I keep replaying everything, he confessed one such night, looking for signs I missed, warnings I ignored. How could I have lived with her for 8 years and not known who she really was? Amy was deliberate in her deception, I reminded him. She showed you only what she wanted you to see. I should have protected them. I'm their father. And you are protecting them now, I insisted. Every day, in 1,000 different ways. Gradually, painfully, we began to heal. Joshua joined a support group for parents dealing with family trauma. I took up volunteering at St. Francis Church, finding comfort in helping others. The children thrived in their new school, making friends and adapting to life in Charleston. 6 months after the trial, on a warm spring day, Joshua received an unexpected visitor at his office, Detective Morris from our hometown police department. He wants to meet us at the apartment this evening, Joshua told me over the phone. Says it's important but wouldn't elaborate. Detective Morris arrived promptly at 7 after the children were in bed. He was a stocky man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Thank you for seeing me, he began, accepting the coffee I offered. I wanted to deliver this information in person rather than over the phone. He opened his briefcase and removed a file. After Ms. Anderson's arrest, we continued investigating her connections to Cortez's network. What we found was disturbing. Joshua tensed beside me. More disturbing than plotting to sell her own children? Detective Morris nodded grimly. We discovered that Lucas may not have been the first child Amy attempted to traffic. The room seemed to tilt. What do you mean? I managed to ask. 3 years ago, a 3-year-old girl disappeared from a playground in Portland, Oregon. Her mother had looked away for just a moment. The case went cold despite extensive investigation. He slid a photograph across the table, a smiling toddler with curly blonde hair. Amy's credit card records show she was in Portland the day Emma Sutton vanished, and we found this in a storage unit rented under one of her aliases. He produced an evidence bag containing a small pink hair clip. DNA testing confirmed this belonged to Emma Sutton. Joshua's face had gone ashen. Are you saying Amy kidnapped this child? We believe she and Cortez were responsible, yes. Unfortunately, we found no trace of Emma. Given the nature of their operation, he didn't need to finish the sentence. I felt physically ill. How many lives had Amy destroyed? How many families had she torn apart? There's one more thing, Detective Morris continued. We've been tracing the money trail. It appears Amy received payments for at least 2 other deliveries before she met Cortez. We think she may have been involved in trafficking even before your marriage, Mr. Anderson. Joshua stood abruptly, walking to the window, his back to us. His shoulders shook silently. Why are you telling us this? I asked, my voice barely audible. You deserve to know the full truth. And he hesitated. We're reopening investigations into several cold cases of missing children in areas where Amy lived or traveled. We may need to speak with you again as these investigations proceed. After he left, Joshua remained at the window, staring out at the night. I slept beside a monster for 8 years, he whispered. Loved her, trusted her with our children. I moved to stand beside him, saying nothing, offering silent support. What if she had succeeded, Mom? What if you hadn't found that photo? What if Olivia and Lucas had just disappeared one day? The thought was too horrible to contemplate. But they didn't, I reminded him. They're safe. They're sleeping peacefully down the hall. He turned to me, his eyes raw with emotion. Thank you, he said fervently, for saving my children, for being here now. I couldn't do this without you. I embraced him, this son who had always been my pride and joy, now bearing burdens no parent should have to carry. We'll get through this, together. That night I checked on the children before going to bed. Lucas slept with his dinosaur clutched to his chest, his breathing deep and even. Olivia had kicked off her covers as usual, one arm flung dramatically above her head. I gently replaced her blanket, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Looking at them, so innocent, so trusting, I felt anew the fierce determination that had driven me that night months ago when I'd bundled them into a taxi and fled into the darkness. I would protect them with my last breath. And somehow, despite everything, we would find happiness again. 1 year after Amy's arrest, life had settled into a new normal. Our apartment near the beach had become a true home, filled with children's artwork, family photos, and the comfortable clutter of daily life. Joshua had been promoted to senior manager at his company, his remote work arrangement now permanent. The children were thriving in school, Olivia excelling at mathematics and art, Lucas developing a passionate interest in marine biology after our weekly trips to the Charleston Aquarium. I had found my own place in our new community, volunteering at St. Francis Church and taking a part-time position at the local library, reading to children during Saturday story hour. The painful past remained with us, but no longer defined us. On a bright autumn morning, Joshua called a family meeting at the breakfast table. The children, sensing something important, set aside their cereal bowls and watched him expectantly. I've been thinking, he began, that it's time to make some changes official. He pulled out a folder containing legal documents. These papers will change our last name from Anderson to Collins, Grandma's family name. Olivia considered this seriously. So I'll be Olivia Collins? Yes, Princess, new name, new start. Can I still be Lucas? Her brother asked anxiously. Joshua smiled, ruffling his hair. Of course, buddy, just a different last name. There's something else, I added, exchanging glances with Joshua. Daddy and I have found a house for us to buy. A real home, not just an apartment. The children's eyes widened with excitement. Later that day, we drove to a charming 2-story house on a quiet street 3 blocks from the ocean. It had a wraparound porch, a backyard with a huge oak tree perfect for a swing, and enough bedrooms that I could have my own space while remaining part of the family. As the children ran from room to room, exclaiming over each new discovery, Joshua stood beside me in what would become the living room. What do you think, Mom? Can you see us building a life here? I squeezed his hand. I already can. We moved in 2 weeks later, on Lucas's 5th birthday. The local moving company Joshua hired was efficient and friendly, and by afternoon, the essentials were unpacked. We celebrated with a small party, just the 4 of us, plus Father Michael, Rachel, and a few friends the children had made at school. As Lucas blew out the candles on his dinosaur-shaped cake, I caught Joshua watching him with a mixture of joy and sadness. Later, when the guests had gone and the children were in bed, he confided his thoughts. I was thinking about what Detective Morris told us, about Amy possibly being involved in trafficking before we even met. Was Lucas just inventory to her? Did she have him specifically to sell him? It was a question that had haunted us both since Morris's visit. I don't know, I admitted. But even if that was her original intention, he became so much more. He's your son, Joshua. Your blood. Your heart. Nothing can change that. He nodded slowly. You're right. And whatever her motives, she gave me 2 incredible gifts. I won't let her taint that. The name change became official in November. The children adapted quickly, proudly introducing themselves as Olivia and Lucas Collins at school. Joshua ordered new business cards and updated his professional profiles. I changed the name on my library badge. With each small step, we distanced ourselves further from the Anderson name and the painful history attached to it. Christmas approached, our first in the new house. Joshua threw himself into creating new family traditions, cutting down a tree at a local farm, driving through the Festival of Lights at the park, baking cookies from my old family recipes. The children crafted homemade ornaments at school, and we hung them proudly on the tree, along with the few precious keepsakes we'd brought from our old life. On Christmas Eve, after a special dinner and the traditional reading of The Night Before Christmas, Joshua surprised us all with an announcement. I've been saving this news for tonight, he said, his eyes twinkling with rare happiness. The house I owned with, before, has sold. The money is in a trust fund for Olivia and Lucas's education. It was another severing of ties to the past, another step toward healing. After the children went to bed, buzzing with excitement for Christmas morning, Joshua and I sat before the fire, enjoying a quiet moment together. I received another letter from Amy yesterday, he said unexpectedly. It was the first time he'd mentioned her in months. I opened this one. I waited, giving him space to share or not as he chose. She's petitioning for a reduced sentence, claiming she's found God in prison, that she's truly remorseful. His voice was neutral, carefully controlled. She wants to see the children. What did you decide? He stared into the fire. I wrote back, told her that when Olivia and Lucas are 18, they can decide for themselves if they want contact with her. Until then, my answer is no. I nodded, respecting his decision. And how do you feel about it? Strangely, free. He turned to me, his expression lightening. I realized I don't hate her anymore. I don't feel anything for her at all. She has no power over me or my family. It was perhaps the most healing thing he could have said. Spring brought new beginnings. Joshua started dating cautiously, a kindergarten teacher he'd met at a school function. The children planted a vegetable garden in the backyard, checking daily for new sprouts with boundless enthusiasm. I joined a book club and a walking group, developing friendships of my own. On a warm Saturday in May, we took the children for a picnic at the beach. While they built an elaborate sandcastle at the water's edge, Joshua and I sat on a blanket watching them. "Do you ever wonder if we did the right thing?" he asked suddenly, keeping the full truth from them about what Amy planned to do. I considered the question carefully. I think we told them as much truth as they could handle at their ages. When they're older, if they ask, we'll tell them more. He nodded. Olivia asked me yesterday if she looks like her mother. I showed her a photograph from our wedding before everything. She stared at it for a long time, then said, "She's pretty, but she looks sad. Children see things we miss sometimes." "They're remarkably resilient," I agreed, watching as Olivia patiently helped Lucas add a moat to their castle. "And they have you. Your love has been their anchor through all of this." "Our love," he corrected, squeezing my hand. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Mom." As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the water, the children raced back to us, breathless and sandy. "Grandma? Daddy? Come see our castle before the tide gets it." Lucas tugged at our hands, his face alight with excitement. We followed them to the water's edge, where an impressive structure stood defiantly against the encroaching waves. Olivia had decorated it with shells and bits of driftwood, while Lucas had populated it with his plastic dinosaurs. "It's the Collins family castle," Olivia announced proudly. "See? There's a room for everyone. Daddy, me, Lucas, and Grandma." "It's magnificent," I told her, genuinely impressed by their creativity. As we stood admiring their handiwork, a larger wave rolled in, washing around the castle's base. The children held their breath, but the structure stood firm. "Look!" Lucas pointed excitedly. "It didn't fall down." "We built it strong," Olivia explained seriously. "So even if the waves come, we'll be okay." Joshua met my eyes over their heads, both of us recognizing the metaphor. Our family had weathered a terrible storm, but we had rebuilt something strong and beautiful from the wreckage. That night, as I stood on the porch of our new home, listening to the distant sound of waves on the shore, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. From that terrifying moment in Arthur's dry cleaning to this peaceful evening, we had traveled through darkness and emerged into light. The children would carry scars from their mother's betrayal, invisible wounds that might never completely heal. Joshua would always bear the pain of loving someone who had revealed herself to be a monster. And I would never forget the fear that had driven me to flee with my grandchildren in the night. But we had survived. More than that, we had found a way to thrive again, to build a new family from the ashes of the old, to create joy where there had been only pain. As I turned to go inside, I saw a drawing Olivia had made taped to the refrigerator, 4 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. "The Collins family," she had written in careful block letters beneath it. Family. After everything, that's what we still were. Different than before, shaped by trauma and loss, but also by courage and love. A family that had faced the worst and emerged stronger. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below and let me know what city you're watching from. Before you go, check out these 2 other stories that are channel favorites. I think you'll be surprised by what you find.